Our lives and futures are so interconnected. Radicalization in distant areas such as Pakistan, India, seem to be so local, but they have global consequences for all of us, and they impact all of us. The way we live together, the way how we look at each other. So in November 2008, we brought a group of passionate women together to Vienna. We invited them to think about and to create a new architecture of security, to create this sisterhood network to safeguard our world, to make it a safer place. It was the same day we met that the terrorists did attack Mumbai, India. Mumbai was in flames. And Archana, you were the only Indian representative in our group, and we shockingly realized this was an immediate call to action.
Edith, I remember that evening so well. We were sitting in your living room and we were watching television, and suddenly we saw the Taj Hotel, the symbol of Mumbai, up in flames. It was so shocking because I had just left India a few hours back and everything seemed so normal and routine. And here, within a few hours, everything had changed. The urge was to just go back to India, to go back to Mumbai, to check out what people were going through, to kind of, be with them and try to understand what was happening. But besides that, I had to call up home, I wanted to check, although my family lives in Delhi and Mumbai is very far away. But the urge was just to call and check if everything is fine. And that call was made, and my husband said, we are all safe. But my neighbor's son had been shot by the bullet of a terrorist in Mumbai. It was so hard to believe this, but it was true. And what was more shocking was that the blame game had all begun. We were all blaming someone for it.
So emotions were running high between Pakistan and India because the Indians felt threatened. The attackers were accused to have been trained on Pakistani territory. So Arshi, what was your immediate reaction as a Pakistani, a security expert, and a woman?
You see, Edith, my immediate thought was what kind of mess we are in now. Because in my country, the conflict was between those who think rationally and those who think emotionally about the relationship between the countries. Years of confidence building and trust building measures had collapsed. There was no way that we were, at that point of time, could hope that the relationship, which were going in the positive direction, would continue. At that time, I thought that I should reach out and try to connect with my sisters across the border, because I thought that it was important that the Indian women should also realize that we, Pakistanis and Indians, were all together in this thing. We were suffering together.
This was the moment where it could go both ways. Yeah. We could try more of the same, indulge in hate, in suspicion, and paranoia. Or we could try to cross the divide, try something new, try a new dialogue driven by women and test the waters and see what can women bring to the table. So we discussed this, and Archana, you were ready to reach out to our Pakistani partners across the border and ask them whether they would bring a delegation to Mumbai and have this discussion and this dialogue there together.
Edith, you're so right, because there were just two options. One was to just join the bandwagon and start blaming the people across the border for everything that was wrong and everything that had happened. And the other choice that I had was to just do something constructive, to reach out to the sisters, to the mothers across the border and understand what they thought about what we were going through. Because, I was very confident that women think differently compared to men. And they are emotionally bound because they are so family-oriented, and they knew that a loss of a son, no matter whose son it was the loss of a son. And I think that is what persuaded me and gave me the strength and made me believe in myself that this had to be done. And I think that is when Edith SAFE provided us this platform to extend an arm of friendship and made it happen.
Arshi, I wonder about your inner dialogue at that time. I know that you did not give your consent easily. We had a number of phone calls, Skypes, conversations across the border, and it took a while till we got your positive response. And what actually made you finally say yes?
You see, personally, I knew that it was important. We had to do that. But the environment was so hostile on both sides of the border because of the media hype, because of the reportings, because of the blame game, that I just thought that perhaps we might not be able to do that. But then I realized that it is not just the opportunity to connect with the women, to empathize with the victims of terrorism, but also to share our side of the story, the untold stories. People in India don't know about the side of Pakistan. They just read what is being written in the newspaper or through the act of some of the individuals. So I really wanted to create that kind of connection where I can also share that there are people in Pakistan who are also suffering because of the fact that they are standing against those terrorists. They don't believe in that. They are against violent extremism. And because of that fact, they are also the target of the terrorists. So I just wanted to have that connection to build. And I'm glad that, of course, there were many questions, there was fear, there was nervousness. And especially when we were having this program at Taj Hotel, that was the target of terrorism. But the way we were received by the people there, the warmth, it was really reassuring.
I must share this point that it was very difficult for us to get the Pakistani women to India, to Mumbai, and stay at the very center of the terrorist attack. We were very nervous. We didn't know which way things could go. You know, it could go either ways. So we were so very nervous. But at the same time, we were so confident that it would happen because we were all mothers. We were all women. And here we had to start a dialogue. We had to open a new chapter. Let things fall apart, but we could make a new beginning. So we were so confident, and we knew that this dialogue had to be driven by passion, by honesty, by understanding, and start afresh. And you remember, we decided to launch this entire meeting by taking the paths that the terrorists had taken. So we walked, the Pakistani women and the Indian women, the victims on both sides, we walked the terror trail. Right from Taj, right up to the station, right up to the hospital, right up to the Leopold Cafe, wherever, you know, the symbols of the terror attack, we walked together. And I think that made the difference because our experiences became so important. We came together. What do you think, Arshi, you remember that thing?
Archana, walking the terror trail, the path that the terrorists took, it was quite emotional for me. And, but I tell you an interesting thing. When I was walking through that path, I just felt as if I was walking in my own country. The buildings, people, I mean, their faces, as if something had happened in my own country. And, you know, and we do have, you know, bomb attacks and other terrorist attacks in Pakistan every now and then. So I just felt that this is just the after effects of what is happening in my own country. It was my story too.
And this is our work, sharing the stories, because the stories are so fundamental for understanding each other, for stopping the demonizing of the other. We were quite bold, I must say, looking back. We met on the day of the 2nd anniversary of the bombings in Mumbai. It was an incredibly charged situation. There were military parades outside, a lot of police weapons everywhere, sandbags, and we had to go through the security to reach the place, the Taj, where we met. And finally, we sat around the table. It was a very tense situation. You felt you could cut the air with the knife. And we sat there, the Pakistani delegation on one side. Nobody was ready to get too close. The Indian delegation on the other side. I was in this lonely space in the middle. And I was wondering, how would we fill this space? What would happen? We felt quite disoriented and lost, but not for long. We had remarkable women in that room. On the one side, there was a woman from Pakistan. She lost her husband to the bullets of a Taliban outside of his house. She was a bereaved mother. On the other side, we had an Indian woman. Her husband led the police force hunting down the terrorists, and he was shot down by the bullets of the terrorists right behind the Taj. These women looked at each other. I mean, they were years apart from light years apart from each other. But there we watched how they came closer. They had nothing to lose anymore. They spoke the truth. Their tears were the same, their pain was the same. And this bridged the gap. This was magic. And we witnessed how these women moved from victimhood to agency. And there I knew we had such a tool for counterterrorism in our hands, which so far has been totally overlooked and not used. So this was the beginning of the dialogue, and this was the magic in the room.
It's so true. Actually, sometimes the sad stories bond better with us. You know, we come closer when we listen to the sad stories, the grief, and there's lots of tears, and you know, it's so overwhelming. But at the same time, there are so many positive stories around. There are so many stories of inspiration, which also have the same impact. But unfortunately, these remain the untold stories, because whenever there is a terror strike, it's so much about how many lives were lost. And very seldom do we talk about how many lives were saved. And just to reiterate my point, I would like to share a story of a hospital which was just behind the Taj Hotel, a maternity hospital, where it was late in the night, and the nurses, there were some young nurses who were on duty. There were 200 young mothers with their little newly born kids in that hospital. And that hospital was taken under siege by the terrorists. And it was such a frightening thing for the nurses, but they kept their presence of mind together, their wit together, and they were so committed to saving the lives. They could have just run away and left the patients, but they just stood there. They put off all the lights, they closed all the windows, they told all the mothers, they pushed them into a dark room, they told the mothers that just muffle the voice of your little ones, just put them to your breast and let them suckle so that there's no sound. And they were able to create pin-drop silence in that hospital. The terrorists went up and down the stairs looking for people and screaming, come out, this, that, and the other, and firing, but there was pin-drop silence. And then they said that, oh my God, I think we've reached an abandoned building. What are we doing here? And then when they went out, it was another story. But this is the story of the potential of women. This is the story of what these little nurses could do. And our effort brought this out to the fore. And then there were newspapers during the second anniversary who were talking about the lives that were saved, and the pages, you know, had turned. They were not talking more about the 166 people who died, but they were talking about the 200, 250 people who were saved. And then people from across the different faiths and religions, they came together and felicitated these nurses. But Arshi, in your area, where especially Swat, where you're doing this research with Edith, your experience has been very different, hasn't it?
Yes, Archana, you know, a lot that has been written or said about Taliban extremism does not really bring the human factor. And I have, you know, have been there, and even as a Pakistani, when I met these women, you know, it was really, really difficult to see how these people were trying to cope with the situation. When we talk about the area, we only talk about those things where, you know, the terrorists are. But there are families, there are mothers, there are people who have emotions, and they have their hopes, and, you know, they want to live their life. And I still remember a woman who talked about, who regretted that how, because of the fact that, you know, the religious leader, you know, he did manage to convince the woman to contribute, to donate their jewelry, the wedding jewelry, in order to save a place in heaven. So here, the potential was used by a person, you know, negatively, but these women were driven by faith. They didn't do anything bad. They were just thinking that they were securing a place in heaven. Later on, they regretted that.
And Arshi, isn't it ironic that an extremist preacher abusing religion and faith are using the potential the power and the strength of women. And we sit here and we don't realize the gold mine in our homes, in our communities. We need to sensitize the women around the world to the threat of violent extremism. There is this famous saying of Augustinus, the saint, give me a child to the age of 6, I have him or her forever. This is our call to focus on this work. This is part of the counter-terrorism work, which so far has been neglected. So security needs to be in safe hands. Security can't be a top-down approach only. We as women need to contribute to creating these safe spaces, and the security paradigm, the new security paradigm, has to be supported and contributed by women around the globe. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. Thank you.